Welcome to the Spirit Rock Music YouTube channel. Today's video is about Leonard Cohen's Avalanche. This is a song that really fascinates me and has done so for many years, but something happened to me with this song. I listened to it not so long ago and suddenly it hit me and the song got a completely new meaning for me. So I'm really keen to hear and read about your views, what you associate with this song, and what you think about the interpretation that I offer in this video. So here we go. Leonard Cohen's Avalanche flashed me when I first heard it and has done so every time since then. I always felt that it relates to a perspective well beyond my scope. Something about the song fascinated me in an almost morbid way. It arouses feelings of being at the mercy of a higher power. It was released in 1971 on the album Songs of Love and Hate. The art of starting a song spectacularly. Quote from the lyrics, "While I stepped into an avalanche, it covered up my soul." That sounds dramatic and makes it clear from the very start that the song deals with inner processes. It reminds me of Bob Dylan's, quote, "Señor, Señor, can you tell me where we're heading? Lincoln County Road or Armageddon?" Crumbs of love at the mercy of a higher power. Here's another snippet of the lyrics that hit me hard. "The crumbs of love that you offer me, they're the crumbs I've left behind." This does not exactly testify to a dialogue on equal footing. While one believes to have found a treasure and generously wants to pass it on, the other labels it as garbage. When I began to delve more deeply into spirituality, an image formed within me of a lower self and a higher self. The former is what we are used to regard as a human being, the figure who stumbles through life more or less unconsciously with all her goals, desires, thoughts and emotions. The higher self, in contrast, holds the experiences of many incarnations or reincarnations, experiences which the ordinary human consciousness usually cannot access. This wealth of experience surrounds the human like a magnetic sphere and shapes his character, his preferences and fears, acting as karma. If this magnetic sphere, for example, has witnessed the death of one of its inhabitants by drowning, the next inhabitant will likely not feel so comfortable in deep water. While the higher self prevails when a human's physical body dies, it is not divine. On a spiritual path, the magnetic bindings can be gradually dissolved until finally the entire higher self is being overcome. For this reason, it can put up considerable resistance against a serious spiritual approach. The director in the great movie Truman Show may serve as an image. Enough of theory, anyway. While listening to Avalanche, I used to think it was the higher self speaking to the human, and in an uncomfortable way to say the least. From that perspective, I thought it was a great song, albeit haunting. Nick Cave recorded a very intense cover. It is a matter of taste, of course, whether you like it. I do, because Cave gives himself completely to the song. The speaker as the divine soul within. Not long ago I listened to some newer Nick Cave songs, including parts of litanies, and thus discovered a very spiritual side of this impressive artist, quite a contrast to the murder ballads, I thought. Against this background I reopened to Avalanche. It hit me again, but quite differently this time. Now it makes much more sense to me to regard the speaker as the divine spark within. From this perspective, the song almost completely loses its haunting character and turns into a recipe for a very practical and sobering spiritual path. I'm really keen to hear and read about your views. In line with Goethe's famous words in Faust, "Two souls, alas, are housed within my breast, and each will wrestle for the mastery there," I regard man as twofold, made up of both mortal and divine aspects. While the latter is, generally speaking, free of anything perishable, it finds itself bound to a mortal human being. From incarnation to incarnation, it waits and hopes that one inhabitant of the above-mentioned magnetic sphere, which we can also call microcosm, finally listens to the soft voice from within, entrusts himself to it, and paves the way for a profound transformation and transfiguration of the whole being, to recreate former glory. In other words, in its imprisoned state, the divine spark within requires help from its human host. The immense glory has been lost. The divine in man has shrunk to a tiny spark. The hunchback talking to the human. Leonard Cohen uses the image of a hunchback, which he also calls a cripple in the second verse. When the human is awake, the leeway of the divine spark is severely limited. The third and fourth line, however, quote, "When I am not this hunchback that you see, I sleep beneath the golden hill," end of quote, hint at inspiration flowing from a higher sphere at night. To further heal, the divine spark needs unearthly nourishment. The seeker already feels a calling, otherwise there would be no conversation at all. He does not, however, understand how he can help the divine spark. Where I used to feel the tone of the song tormenting, I now see it as sobering advice on a spiritual path. Pain and suffering, turning into a servant of the divine. The seeker already fulfills an essential precondition. He becomes more and more aware of his suffering and is actively looking out for a solution. The solution, however, does not mean he can enter an earthly paradise where anything inconvenient just magically disappears and all earthly desires are duly fulfilled. Rather, the solution revolves around understanding his task, to help the divine spark reclaim its freedom. The human needs to dedicate his life to this glorious goal. Quote from the lyrics, "You who wish to conquer pain, you must learn to serve me well." And another quote from later on in the lyrics, "You who wish to conquer pain, you must learn what makes me kind." Later on in the song, pain is addressed in the following way. "Your pain is no credential here. It's just the shadow of my wound." End of quote. A seeker suffering from world weariness may regard this as a sign of maturity and may even be proud of that state of being. But there's no reason for pride. There is nothing liberating in being disappointed because you don't get what you want. A liberating aspect may appear once the seeker realizes that it is not him suffering, but the divine soul within. At best, the human receives an idea, a shadow, of this higher aspect of suffering. If all is well, he will react by opening up for higher energies from the divine realm. This brings about the need to let go of misconceptions. The divine cannot be nourished with earthly treasures. It requires a different kind of food and clothing. Only when earthly desires step back, the divine energies may penetrate to the innermost being, heal the cripple, and weave a soul garment. Hints at such immaterial clothing can be found in songs such as Avicii's Wake Me Up, Harry Styles' Sign of the Times, Bob Dylan's Isis, and very elaborately in the traditional Scarborough Fair, which was popularized by Simon and Garfunkel, and you'll find contributions to all of these songs on this YouTube channel. Another quote from the lyrics of Avalanche. You strike my side by accident as you go down for your gold. The cripple here that you clothe and feed is neither starved nor cold. He does not ask for your company, not at the center of the world. End of quote. The delicate contact to the soft voice within remains unconscious at first, while the human pursues earthly goals. But the divine spark is not at home in this realm. Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world." On to the next verse. The pedestal, false worship and soberness. Another quote from the lyrics. When I am on a pedestal, you did not raise me there. Your laws do not compel me to kneel grotesque and bare. I myself am the pedestal for this ugly hump at which you stare. End of quote. Different laws apply to the divine spark than to the human. Jesus does not want us to worship him. He wants us to follow his example. It is about practical realization, not paralyzing awe. The stunted remnant of eternity is itself the pedestal on which the immortal man is rebuilt. The God within needs the help of man. Now that the seeker at least tries to participate in the process, however clumsy, an almost impossible situation arises. The sublime divine depends on the unworthy earthly creature. Cohen has also found impressive images for that in Ballad of the Absent Mare, which is also covered on this YouTube channel. Another quote from the lyrics of Avalanche. I have begun to long for you, I who have no greed. I have begun to ask for you, I who have no need. You say you've gone away from me, but I can feel you when you breathe. End of quote. Man may believe to be infinitely far away from the divine, but it lives within him. It is closer than hands and feet. I can feel you when you breathe. Avoid both self-pity and exaggeration. On to the last verse. Another quote. Do not dress in those rags for me. I know you are not poor. And don't love me quite so fiercely now, when you know that you are not sure. It is your turn, beloved. It is your flesh that I wear. End of quote. When the seeker accepts and painfully experiences his unworthiness, it's no use belittling himself for it. There is a famous quote which has frequently been attributed to Nelson Mandela. But apparently it is not by him, but by Marianne Williamson from the novel A Return to Love from 1989. It goes like this. Our deepest fear is not that we are weak. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Marianne Williamson, A Return to Love, 1989. Apparently, the quote does not appear in any of Mandela's speeches, including his 1994 inauguration. Just like keeping oneself small, exaggerated devotion is also not helpful. Man is weak and may fall any time. Staying alert and open for impulses from within is key. Cohen's line, "It is your flesh that I wear," is another impetus to change one's perspective. A seeker may feel that next to all his talents, he can now add an extended soul consciousness. In fact, it is the other way round. The physical body is an attribute of the soul. It is helpful to realize its position in the complex human condition and not see more in it. From that perspective, it is not the human that gets caught in an avalanche, as I wrongly assumed for a long time when listening to the song. It makes more sense to me now to assume the speaker remains the same throughout the song. So, it is presumably the divine aspect being caught in the avalanche, buried in the snow, an image for earthly bindings, and therefore prevented from unfolding its power. We as mortal humans are not victims of circumstances, but creators of our ungodly world. We have broken the connection with our innermost core. It is your turn, beloved. It is no exploitative superior power talking here, rather a loving ally who helps the seeker fulfill his task and motivates him to do so, even though the seeker may not like to hear each piece of advice. Yeah, and that was it for today. As I said, I'm really keen to hear and read about your views. Let me know in the comments on the blog or below the video. And note that there are some great cover songs. I liked a live performance, a recording of a live performance by Leonard Cohen. And Nick Cave has also recorded at least two versions, a very intense version and a softer version. And a version that also resonates with me is from Jenny Lee Cohen, who apparently is not related to Leonard Cohen. Yeah, and so let me know what you think, if this interpretation resonates with you, if you're also fascinated by this song. All the best for your own quest. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. All the best. See you next time. Ciao.